Homeless little girl sings to single father, and he freezes upon recognizing his missing daughter's song. Before we get into it, let's make this moment global. Leave a comment in your own language. David Thompson pressed his trembling fingers against the frosted window of Murphy's Coffee House, watching the snow fall on North Michigan Avenue. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days. That's how long it had been since Emma vanished from Lincoln Park during what was supposed to be a simple afternoon together. The Saturday ritual never changed. Same corner table, same black coffee growing cold, same desperate hope that somehow she'd walk through that door. At 42, David looked older than his years, grey, threading through his dark hair like spiderwebs of grief. The wedding ring was gone. Sarah had died in that car accident 2 years ago, taking with her any remaining hope that Emma might find her way home to a complete family. Still nothing from the police? Martha, the elderly waitress, refilled his cup with practiced sympathy. She'd been asking the same question every Saturday for months. David shook his head, unable to speak. Detective Morrison had stopped returning his calls 6 months ago. The case had gone cold, filed away with thousands of other missing children who simply evaporated into America's shadows. The morning crowd buzzed around him, families laughing, children chattering about Christmas wishes. Each child's voice was a knife twisting deeper. Emma would be 8 now. Would her hair still be that impossible shade of copper? Would she still wrinkle her nose when she laughed? Outside, a small figure emerged from the alley between buildings. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, with matted reddish hair peeking from beneath a torn knit cap. She wore layers of mismatched clothing, clearly too big for her tiny frame, and clutched a cardboard sign that read, "Help, please." David's chest tightened. Another lost child. Chicago was full of them, invisible to most adults rushing past with their important lives. He reached for his wallet, planning to give her whatever cash he had, when something stopped him cold. She was singing. The melody drifted through the glass, soft and pure, despite the traffic noise. David's coffee cup slipped from his nerveless fingers, shattering against the floor in an explosion of ceramic and hot liquid. "Hush now, my little star. Daddy's here to keep you safe. Dream of mountains high and far, where angels guard your peaceful place." The words hit him like a physical blow. That song, he'd written it himself when Emma was 3, singing it every night as she drifted off to sleep. No one else knew those words, no one except. David lunged toward the window, his chair toppling backward. The little girl looked up at the sound, and their eyes met through the glass. For one impossible moment, time stopped. Those eyes, green as summer leaves, with that same stubborn tilt to the chin, the nose, the shape of her face beneath the grime and exhaustion. "Emma," he whispered, the name torn from his throat like a prayer. But instead of recognition, instead of joy, the little girl's face twisted in pure terror. She stumbled backward, nearly falling, then turned and ran toward the busy street. "No!" David crashed through the coffee shop door, ignoring Martha's shocked cry. "Emma, wait!" But she was gone, swallowed by the crowd of Saturday shoppers, leaving only the echo of an impossible song and the fragments of David's shattered world scattered like snow across the sidewalk. David sprinted down Michigan Avenue, his heart hammering against his ribs as he pushed through clusters of holiday shoppers. The little girl had vanished as completely as smoke, but he couldn't stop running. After 3 years of dead ends and crushing disappointment, something primal had awakened in him, the absolute certainty that he'd just seen his daughter. "Emma!" He called her name until his voice cracked, spinning in circles at each intersection, searching every doorway and alley. Concerned strangers stared as he stumbled past, this wild-eyed man in yesterday's clothes shouting at the winter air. By the time he reached the end of the block, his legs gave out. David collapsed against a lamppost, gasping in the frigid air, watching his breath form clouds that dissolved into nothing. just like Emma. Again. But the song, God, that song. He could still hear her sweet voice wrapping around words he'd written in a moment of pure love, sitting beside her tiny bed in their old apartment, before the divorce, before the custody arrangement, before that terrible October afternoon when he'd turned away for 30 seconds to buy ice cream and turned back to find her simply gone. David pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called Detective Morrison's direct line. It went straight to voicemail. "Morrison, it's David Thompson. I saw her. I saw Emma outside Murphy's Coffee House on Michigan Avenue. She was singing our song, the lullaby I told you about. She's alive, she's here in Chicago, and she's living on the streets. You have to—" The voicemail cut him off. David stared at the phone, then hurled it against the brick wall of a boutique. The screen spiderwebbed, but the device still worked when he picked it up, blood from his scraped knuckles smearing the glass. 3 years of police reports, FBI interviews, and media appeals had taught him one bitter truth. No one would believe him without proof. A grieving father's desperate sighting meant nothing. He'd made too many false alarms, chased too many red-haired children through too many crowds. This time would be different. This time, he'd get proof. David walked back to Murphy's Coffee House, methodically searching every alley, every doorway, every spot where a frightened child might hide. Martha met him at the door with a broom, and concern etched in her weathered features. "Honey, what happened? You left such a mess." "The little girl outside," David interrupted. "The one with the sign. Do you know her? Have you seen her before?" Martha's expression softened. "Oh, that poor thing. She's been coming around for weeks now. Never begs, never bothers anyone, just sits there with that sign. Breaks your heart, it does." "Weeks?" David's pulse quickened. "How many weeks?" "Since before Thanksgiving, I'd say. Maybe early November. Always in the same spot, always alone. I tried to give her food once, but she ran off, scared as a rabbit, that one." November. While David had been sitting inside this very coffee shop, drowning in his weekly ritual of grief, Emma, if it was Emma, had been surviving on the streets just outside. The irony was crushing. "Did she ever sing?" David asked. "Did you ever hear her sing?" Martha nodded slowly. "Pretty voice like an angel. Made me think of my own granddaughter, God rest her soul." "Why? Do you know that child?" David's throat closed. "How do you explain to a stranger that the homeless girl they've been watching might be your daughter? That for 3 years you've been praying to a God you're not sure exists for exactly this impossible moment? I think she might be my daughter, the one who disappeared." Martha's hand flew to her chest. "Dear Lord, are you certain? The song she was singing, it's one I wrote for Emma when she was little. No one else knows those words." Martha studied his face for a long moment, then nodded toward the window. "She usually comes back around sunset. Parks herself right there between the newspaper stand and the bus stop. If you're right, if that's truly your little girl, what are you going to do?" David looked out at the spot where his world had tilted off its axis. What was he going to do? Emma, if it was Emma, had looked at him with terror, not recognition. 3 years of trauma had built walls around her that might be impossible to breach, but she remembered the song. Somehow, despite everything that had happened to her, she remembered their song. "I'm going to wait," David said quietly. "For as long as it takes." As the December sun set behind Chicago's skyline, David positioned himself across the street from Murphy's Coffee House, hidden in the doorway of a closed bookstore. He'd been standing there for 4 hours, stamping his feet against the cold, watching every person who passed beneath the streetlights. The dinner crowd had thinned, leaving only a few determined shoppers hurrying home with their packages. David's coffee had long since gone cold, but he didn't dare leave his post. Not when Emma might return to the spot Martha had described. At 6:47 p.m. she appeared. The little girl emerged from between two parked cars like a ghost, clutching the same cardboard sign and wearing what looked like a man's oversized coat that dragged behind her like a royal train. Even from a distance, David could see how carefully she moved, checking over her shoulder, staying in the shadows. She settled into the exact spot Martha had indicated, arranging herself cross-legged against the newspaper stand with practiced efficiency. Then, so quietly David had to strain to hear, she began to sing again. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Not their song this time, but her voice carried the same heartbreaking sweetness that had stopped his world that morning. David watched, memorizing every detail, the way she tucked her hands inside the coat sleeves for warmth, how she jumped at every sudden sound, the careful distance she maintained from passing adults. 3 years on the streets. How had she survived? Who had taken care of her? The questions multiplied in his mind like cancer cells, each one more terrible than the last. A businessman walked past, glanced at her sign and dropped a few coins into the empty coffee cup at her feet. The little girl whispered, "Thank you," so softly David barely heard it. She didn't look up, didn't make eye contact. Behaviors learned through hard experience. David's hands clenched into fists. Someone had taught his daughter to be afraid. Someone had stolen 3 years of her childhood and left her here, begging for pocket change in downtown Chicago. The rage building in his chest was pure and murderous. But rage wouldn't help Emma now. She needed patience, gentleness, proof that she was safe. David forced himself to breathe, to think like the software engineer he used to be before grief consumed his life. This was a problem to be solved, step by careful step. He pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app. If Emma was truly suffering from amnesia or trauma-induced memory loss, maybe hearing their song again would trigger something. Maybe the melody that had stopped him cold could work the same magic on her. David began to sing, keeping his voice low enough that only the phone could hear, "Hush now, my little star, Daddy's here to keep you safe. Dream of mountains high and far, where angels guard your peaceful place. Close your eyes and drift away to where the silver moonbeams dance. Morning always brings new day, but Daddy's love will never chance." The last verse, the one he'd added when Emma turned 4, when she'd started having nightmares about monsters under her bed. He'd sung it to her the night before she disappeared, watching her eyelids flutter closed as the words worked their gentle magic. When he finished recording, David looked up to find the little girl gone again. The spot by the newspaper stand was empty except for a few scattered coins and the depression in the snow where she'd been sitting. How did she move so silently? Where did she go when she vanished? David checked his watch. 7:23 p.m. She'd stayed for 36 minutes, long enough for him to record the song, but not long enough for him to approach. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he'd try something different. Maybe if he played the recording from a distance, let her hear the full lullaby without the threat of human contact, it might spark some flicker of recognition. As David walked home to his empty apartment, he passed a group of teenagers sharing hot chocolate outside a cafe. One of them, a girl with bright red hair, laughed at something her friends said. The sound was so much like Emma's giggle that David stopped in his tracks, his heart breaking all over again. Somewhere in this city, his daughter was finding a place to sleep tonight. Somewhere in this city, she was curled up in whatever shelter she'd managed to find, probably cold, probably hungry, probably afraid, but alive. Against all odds and statistics, Emma was alive. David pulled out his phone and called his brother Michael in Seattle. When Michael answered on the 3rd ring, his voice heavy with sleep, David didn't bother with small talk. "I found her, Mike. I found Emma." "David, we've talked about this. You can't keep—" "I'm not delusional. She was singing our song, Mike. The lullaby I wrote for her. She's been living on the streets here in Chicago for months. Silence stretched across the connection. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice careful. "Are you absolutely certain? As certain as I've ever been about anything in my life." "Then what do you need?" David closed his eyes, grateful for the first person in 3 years who didn't immediately assume he was losing his mind. "I need help. She doesn't recognize me. She's scared, traumatized. I need to figure out how to approach her without making things worse." "I'll catch the first flight out," Michael said without hesitation. "And David, if it's really her, if Emma's really alive, we'll figure this out together." David spent Sunday morning researching childhood trauma and memory loss, filling his apartment with printed articles and sticky notes until every surface looked like a conspiracy theorist's evidence board. The information painted a grim picture. Children who experienced severe trauma often developed amnesia as a protective mechanism, blocking out not just the traumatic event, but sometimes entire periods of their lives. If Emma had been kidnapped, and the evidence suggested exactly that, her young mind might have erased not just the abduction, but her entire life before it, including him. At 2 p.m., his brother Michael arrived from Seattle, carrying 2 duffel bags and wearing the same worried expression he'd worn since their parents died 15 years ago. Michael was everything David wasn't: organized, practical, unshakable in a crisis. If anyone could help him navigate this impossible situation, it was Mike. "Show me where you saw her," Michael said after David had explained everything twice. They drove to Michigan Avenue in Michael's rental car, parking across from Murphy's Coffee House. The lunch crowd filled the sidewalks, but the spot by the newspaper stand remained empty. David pointed to the exact location, describing Emma's appearance, her behavior, the way she disappeared like smoke. "The song is what convinced you?" Michael asked. David played the recording he'd made the night before, watching his brother's face carefully. Michael had been there when Emma was born, had spent countless weekends at their house before the divorce. He knew the lullaby almost as well as David did. When the recording ended, Michael sat in silence for a long moment. "That's not proof she's Emma," he said finally, "but it's proof something's happening here that defies coincidence." "Before we continue, let me ask you something. If you're watching this story unfold and thinking about your own family connections, I'd love to hear about them. What song reminds you of someone special? Share in the comments below if you feel comfortable. And if you're enjoying this journey with us, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter. "We need professional help," Michael continued. "Someone who specializes in trauma recovery, specifically with children. I know someone from my hospital back in Seattle, Dr. Sarah Chen. She consults on cases involving trafficked kids, missing persons who've been recovered. If I can convince her to fly out here." David nodded, grateful to have someone else making decisions. The past 3 days had left him emotionally raw, running on pure adrenaline and hope. They spent the afternoon establishing a surveillance routine. David would maintain his morning vigil at Murphy's, while Michael would handle the practical aspects, contacting Dr. Chen, researching homeless shelters that might have records of a girl matching Emma's description, reaching out to social services. What if she doesn't come back? David asked as they sat in the rental car, watching the spot where his world had shifted. "She'll come back. Kids like that are creatures of habit. They stick to patterns that feel safe. If she's been using this spot for weeks, she'll return." At 6:30 p.m., Michael proved right. Emma appeared from the same direction as the night before, moving with that same careful, practiced stealth. Tonight she wore different clothes, a purple sweater that actually fit her, jeans that were only slightly too long. Someone had given her better clothes, or she'd found them somewhere. "Jesus," Michael whispered, "it's really her, isn't it?" David couldn't speak. Seeing Emma through his brother's eyes, hearing the recognition in Michael's voice, made everything real in a way that his own desperate hope couldn't. This wasn't grief-induced hallucination or wishful thinking. His daughter was alive, sitting 50 feet away, completely unaware that her family had never stopped looking for her. Emma arranged herself in the same spot, pulling out what looked like a small notebook. Instead of just sitting passively, she appeared to be writing or drawing something. When a couple walked past, without acknowledging her, she held up her sign briefly, then returned to whatever was occupying her attention in the notebook. "She's not just begging," Michael observed. What is she doing?" David squinted through the car window. Emma was holding up pages from her notebook to passing strangers. Not her cardboard sign, but actual drawings. A few people stopped, looked at what she was showing them, then dropped money in her cup. "She's selling art," David realized. "She's drawing pictures and selling them." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. At 5, Emma had loved to draw. Endless pictures of princesses and dragons and flowers that covered their refrigerator like colorful wallpaper. She'd insisted on drawing him a new picture every morning before preschool, usually featuring stick figures of their family with impossibly large smiles. Now she was using that same artistic gift to survive on the streets. A teenage girl stopped to look at Emma's drawing, smiled, and dropped a $5 bill in the cup. Emma carefully tore the page from her notebook and handed it over, whispering something that made the teenager laugh. "She's not just surviving," Michael said quietly. "She's adapted, built a life. David, that's your kid, all right. Creative, resourceful, stubborn as hell." David watched his daughter, his brilliant, artistic, resilient daughter, close her notebook and prepare to leave for the night. She moved with the same efficiency as before, collecting her things with practiced speed. "Tomorrow," David said. "Tomorrow, I'm going to try to talk to her. David, I know the risks. I know she might run, but Mike, she's 8 years old and she's living on the streets in December. Whatever trauma she's been through, whatever's blocking her memories, it can't be worse than watching her disappear again because I was too afraid to try." Michael nodded slowly. "Dr. Chen is flying in Tuesday morning. She'll know how to handle this properly, safely. Can you wait 2 more days?" David looked at Emma one last time before she vanished into the Chicago night. 2 more days. 48 more hours while his daughter faced whatever dangers waited in the darkness. "I'll wait," he lied, already planning his approach for tomorrow morning. Monday morning arrived gray and bitter, with the kind of Lake Michigan wind that cut through clothing like ice-cold knives. David positioned himself outside Murphy's coffee house 2 hours earlier than usual, clutching a thermos of hot chocolate and a bag containing a fresh banana, a granola bar, and the small teddy bear that had lived on Emma's bed until the day she disappeared. The teddy bear had been a gift from Sarah's mother, a soft brown bear named Patches, because of the heart-shaped mark on his chest. Emma had carried Patches everywhere until she was 4, then relegated him to bedtime duty. If anything could trigger her memories, David hoped it would be Patches. At 9:15 a.m., Emma appeared from the direction of Grant Park, moving more slowly than usual. Even from a distance, David could see she was favoring her left foot, limping slightly as she made her way to her usual spot. She was hurt. Every parental instinct screamed at David to run to her, to scoop her up and carry her to the nearest hospital. Instead, he forced himself to wait, to watch, to let her settle into her routine before making his move. Emma lowered herself carefully to the ground, wincing as she arranged her blanket and pulled out her notebook. When she opened to a fresh page and began sketching, David could see her hands shaking, from cold or pain, he couldn't tell. This was it. Professional advice be damned. Dr. Chen's expertise be damned. His daughter was hurt and alone, and he wasn't going to watch from across the street for another second. David crossed Michigan Avenue during a break in traffic, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it over the city noise. Emma didn't notice him approaching until he was 20 feet away. When she looked up and saw him walking directly toward her, her entire body went rigid. "It's okay," David called softly, stopping where he was and raising his empty hands. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." Emma scrambled to her feet, favoring the injured foot, clutching her notebook against her chest like armor. Her green eyes darted between David and the street, calculating escape routes. "You're hurt," David continued, keeping his voice gentle. "Your foot. Is it okay?" For a moment, Emma just stared at him. Up close, David could see details that had been hidden by distance. The hollows in her cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals, the careful way she held herself, the premature wariness in eyes that should have been full of 8-year-old wonder. But it was Emma. Despite the grime and the fear and the 3 years that had changed them both, it was undeniably his daughter. "I don't need help," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the traffic. "I heard you singing yesterday," David said. "That song, 'Hush Now, My Little Star.' Where did you learn it?" Emma's eyes widened. Her grip on the notebook tightened until her knuckles went white. I don't know. I just know it. Would you like to hear the rest of it?" Before Emma could answer, David began to sing, keeping his voice low and gentle. "Hush now, my little star. Daddy's here to keep you safe." Emma's notebook slipped from her fingers, hitting the sidewalk with a soft thud. She took a shaky step backward, her face cycling through confusion, fear, and something that might have been recognition. "Close your eyes and drift away to where the silver moonbeams dance." "Stop," Emma's voice cracked on the word. "Stop singing that." "Do." David's heart broke at the pain in her voice, but he pressed on with the final verse. "Morning always brings new day, but Daddy's love will never chance." Tears were streaming down Emma's face now, carving clean tracks through the grime. She shook her head violently as if trying to dislodge something painful. I can't. Who are you?" David slowly reached into his bag and pulled out Patches. The teddy bear looked exactly as he had 3 years ago, brown fur slightly matted from being cuddled, the heart-shaped mark clearly visible on his chest. Emma's gasp was audible even over the street noise. "Patches," she whispered, then clapped her hand over her mouth as if the name had escaped without permission. "Do you remember him?" David asked gently. "Do you remember who gave him to you?" Emma was crying openly now, her small body shaking with sobs that seemed too large for her frame, but she wasn't running. Despite her terror, despite whatever walls her mind had built to protect her, she wasn't running. "I dream about him," she said finally. "I dream about a man who sings to me, and a bear named Patches, and a room with yellow walls and flowers on the curtains. But the dreams don't make sense. They feel like someone else's memories." David's own tears started then. 3 years of grief and hope and desperate love pouring out of him in the middle of a busy Chicago sidewalk. "Emma," he whispered. "My beautiful, brave Emma. Those aren't someone else's memories. They're yours. You're my daughter, and I've been looking for you every single day since you disappeared." Emma stared at him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face for something, truth, maybe, or safety, or the father she'd lost when her world went dark. "Daddy?" The word was barely a breath, filled with 3 years of longing and confusion and hope. "Yes, baby girl, it's me. Daddy's here. Daddy's—" Emma collapsed into David's arms like a marionette with cut strings, her small body shaking with sobs that seemed to tear themselves from the deepest part of her soul. David held her carefully, afraid she might break, afraid she might disappear again if he held too tight. "I remember the yellow room," Emma whispered against his shoulder. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, and the way you used to draw faces on my eggs to make me laugh." Each recovered memory hit David like a physical blow. She did remember, fragments and pieces buried beneath whatever trauma had stolen 3 years of their lives. "Where have you been, sweetheart?" David asked gently. "What happened to you?" Emma pulled back to look at his face, her eyes older than any 8-year-old's should be. I don't remember all of it. There was a woman who said she knew you, and then darkness and being scared for a long time. And then I was here, and I couldn't remember my last name or where I lived or... Her voice trailed off, and David saw her struggling with memories that might be too painful to surface all at once. It's okay, he said quickly. We don't have to talk about it now. We have time. All the time in the world. Are you really my daddy? Emma asked, touching his face with trembling fingers. For real? This isn't another dream? For real, baby girl. I promise. Emma buried her face against his neck again, breathing in his scent like she was trying to memorize it. I missed you so much, but I couldn't remember what I was missing. It just felt like there was a big empty space inside me that hurt all the time. David's phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Doctor, Chen landed early. Where are you? But David barely registered the message. His daughter was in his arms, alive and real, and remembered him. Nothing else mattered in that moment. Not the well-meaning professionals who wanted to help, not the police who would need statements, not the legal complexities that would surely follow. Are you hurt? David asked, remembering how she'd been favoring her foot. Your leg. Just a cut from some glass, Emma said. It's not bad. I'm used to taking care of myself. The casual way she said it, I'm used to taking care of myself, broke David's heart all over again. No 8-year-old should be used to that kind of survival. You don't have to take care of yourself anymore, David said firmly. That's my job. That's what daddies do. Emma pulled back to study his face again, as if she couldn't quite believe he was real. Can I come home with you? Do we still have the yellow room? The truth hit David like a sledgehammer. The yellow room was gone. Their old apartment, the life they'd shared before she disappeared, all of it was gone. Sarah was dead. The custody arrangement was meaningless. Emma's bedroom furniture was in storage, her clothes donated to charity, her life packed away in boxes he'd been unable to look at for 3 years. But Emma was looking at him with such hope, such desperate need for something familiar and safe, that David couldn't bear to explain all the losses at once. We'll figure out where home is, he said instead. Together. The most important thing is that we're together. Emma nodded, then picked up her notebook from where it had fallen. She flipped to a page near the back and showed David a drawing. A stick-figure man with dark hair standing next to a smaller figure with red hair. Between them was a teddy bear, and above them both, musical notes floated like confetti. I drew this last week, Emma said quietly. I didn't know why, but I kept drawing the same man over and over. Now I know I was drawing you. David stared at the picture, amazed by his daughter's resilience, by the way her subconscious had held on to love, even when her conscious mind couldn't access the memories. Emma, there are some people who want to help us, David said carefully. My brother Michael, your Uncle Mike, and a doctor who knows about kids who've been through scary things. They want to make sure you're okay, that you're healthy and safe. Emma's grip on his hand tightened. Will you stay with me when I talk to them? I'm not going anywhere, David promised. Not ever again. As they walked toward the coffee shop to wait for Michael and Dr. Chen, Emma sang quietly, not the lullaby that had brought them back together, but a new song, one David had never heard before. What's that song, sweetheart? Emma looked up at him with eyes that held both innocence and hard-won wisdom. It's one I made up. About finding home again after being lost for a very long time. David squeezed her small hand, feeling like his heart might burst from the painful joy of having her back. It's beautiful, baby girl. Will you teach it to me? Emma smiled, the first real smile David had seen from her, and nodded. I'll teach you all my songs, Daddy. We have lots of time now. As they reached the coffee shop door, David's phone rang. The caller ID showed Detective Morrison's number. For 3 years, David had prayed for this call, imagined the moment when he could tell Morrison that Emma was found, safe, alive. Now that the moment was here, he realized he didn't want to share it yet. Didn't want the questions and procedures and complications that would follow. He let the call go to voicemail and followed his daughter into the warmth of Murphy's coffee house, where Martha, the waitress, took one look at them and burst into tears. "Dear Lord," Martha whispered, "it's really her, isn't it? Your little girl." Emma pressed closer to David's side, suddenly shy again. But when Martha brought over hot chocolate topped with whipped cream and a plate of warm cookies, Emma's eyes lit up with something David thought he might never see again. Childlike wonder. "Thank you," Emma whispered to Martha, then looked up at David. "She's nice. I like her." David watched his daughter eat cookies and drink hot chocolate, making soft humming sounds of contentment. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, covering the city in fresh white that made everything look clean and new. For the first time in 3 years, David Thompson believed in second chances. Michael burst through the coffee shop door, with Dr. Sarah Chen close behind, both of them stopping short when they saw David and Emma huddled together in the corner booth. Emma instinctively pressed closer to her father, watching the newcomers with the careful wariness of a child who'd learned not to trust strangers. "Emma, this is your Uncle Mike," David said gently. "He used to give you piggyback rides when you were little." Michael approached slowly, his medical training evident in the way he moved, non-threatening, patient, giving Emma space to process. "Hi, Emma. I'm so happy to see you again." Emma studied Michael's face with intense concentration. "You have the same eyes as Daddy," she said finally, "but yours are brown and his are green." "Actually, mine are green too," Michael said with a gentle smile, "and yours are the most beautiful green I've ever seen, just like they were when you were 5. Doctor." Chen remained by the door, giving the family their space, while observing Emma's behavior with professional interest. She was Asian American, maybe 40, with kind eyes and the sort of calm presence that spoke of years working with traumatized children. "Emma," David said, "Dr. Chen is here to help make sure you're healthy and feeling okay. She's very nice, and she works with lots of kids who've been through scary things." "I'm not sick," Emma said quickly, a flash of panic crossing her face. "I don't need to go to a hospital." Dr. Chen finally approached, pulling out a chair and sitting at Emma's eye level. "You're absolutely right. You don't look sick at all. You look like a very strong, very brave girl. I was hoping we could just talk a little bit, and maybe I could take a look at that cut on your foot to make sure it's healing properly." Emma glanced at David, who nodded encouragingly. "It's up to you, sweetheart, but I'll be right here the whole time." What followed was the most skillful interview David had ever witnessed. Dr. Chen talked to Emma about her drawings, her songs, her favorite foods, anything except the traumatic memories that were clearly lurking beneath the surface. Gradually, Emma relaxed, even showing Dr. Chen some of her artwork. "You're very talented, Doctor," Chen said, examining a detailed sketch of the Chicago skyline. "How long have you been drawing pictures like this?" "Since I could remember," Emma said. "Drawing helps when I feel scared or confused. It's like putting the pictures in my head onto paper so they don't bounce around inside anymore." Dr. Chen nodded knowingly. "That's a very smart coping mechanism. Can you tell me about some of the places you've drawn?" Emma flipped through her notebook, showing sketches of various locations around Chicago: parks, buildings, alleys, storefronts. But one drawing made David's blood run cold: a house with boarded windows, surrounded by a tall fence with dark figures standing guard. "What about this one?" Dr. Chen asked carefully. Emma's entire demeanor changed, her shoulders hunched, and she pulled the notebook against her chest protectively. "That's the bad place." "I don't like to think about the bad place." "That's okay," Dr. Chen said quickly. We don't have to talk about it now. But Emma, if you ever want to talk about the bad place, or if you remember anything that might help other kids who are lost, your daddy and I will listen, okay? Emma nodded, but David could see her retreating into herself, the walls going back up. Michael cleared his throat. Emma, are you hungry? I bet you are. What's your favorite food these days? The subject change worked. Emma brightened slightly. Grilled cheese sandwiches and soup. Martha makes really good soup. As if summoned, Martha appeared with a steaming bowl of tomato soup and a perfectly golden grilled cheese sandwich. On the house, she said firmly when David reached for his wallet. This little angel has been breaking my heart for weeks. Least I can do is feed her properly. Watching Emma eat, really eat, not the careful guarded bites of someone who wasn't sure when the next meal would come, David felt something loosen in his chest. She was safe. She was here. She was going to be okay. But the drawing of the house with boarded windows haunted him. Somewhere in Chicago, that place existed. And if Emma had been held there, other children might be there still. Dr. Chen insisted on examining Emma in the coffee shop's private office, with David present and the door open. The physical exam revealed what David had feared: old scars, evidence of malnutrition, and the kind of hypervigilance that spoke of chronic stress. But Emma was remarkably healthy, considering 3 years of street life. She's resilient, Dr. Chen told David quietly while Emma used the restroom. Physically, she's going to be fine with proper nutrition and medical care. Emotionally, that's going to take time. The amnesia appears to be psychogenic, her mind protecting her from traumatic memories. As she feels safer, more memories will likely surface. Is that good or bad? Both. The memories may be painful, but they might also help us understand what happened to her. And more importantly, they might help law enforcement find whoever did this. When Emma returned, Dr. Chen showed her some photographs on her tablet, children's faces, all around Emma's age. Emma, I work with kids who've been missing, like you were. Sometimes they remember other children who were in the same place. Do any of these faces look familiar? Emma studied each photo carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she reached the 7th photo, a boy with dark hair and sad eyes, she gasped. Tommy, she whispered. His name is Tommy. He was scared all the time and he cried for his mom. Is he? Did he get home too? Dr. Chen's expression grew grave. Tommy Rodriguez. He's been missing for 8 months. Emma, this is very important. Do you remember where you saw Tommy? Emma's hands began to shake. The bad place. We weren't supposed to talk to each other, but sometimes we did when the lady wasn't looking. Tommy said he was from California and his daddy spoke Spanish. David felt sick. If Emma remembered Tommy, if she'd been held in the same place as other missing children, then they weren't dealing with a simple kidnapping. This was something much worse. Emma, Dr. Chen continued gently. How many other children were at the bad place? Different ones at different times. They came and went. But Tommy and me were there the longest. Emma's voice grew smaller. I tried to help him not be so scared. I sang to him sometimes, the song Daddy taught me. The lullaby. Even in hell, Emma had used their song to comfort another frightened child. David had to turn away to hide his tears. Michael's phone buzzed with a text. He read it, frowned, then showed the screen to David. Detective Morrison called, says it's urgent, wants to meet immediately. Dr. Chen caught the exchange. The police need to be involved now. Emma's memories could be crucial in finding other missing children. But we need to handle this carefully. Interview trauma protocols, child psychologist present, the works. I don't want to talk to police, Emma said suddenly, having overheard. They ask too many questions and they don't believe kids. David knelt beside her chair. Sweetheart, these police officers are different. They want to help find Tommy and the other kids, but you don't have to do anything you're not ready for. Emma considered this. If Tommy is still at the bad place, he's really scared. And there might be new kids there too. She took a shaky breath. I'll talk to them, but only if you stay with me. Always, David promised. Doctor, Chen made a series of phone calls, arranging for a specialized interview room at the FBI field office, complete with child psychologist Dr. Rebecca Torres and a trauma-informed investigative team. The interview was scheduled for the following morning, giving Emma time to process and rest. Where will she stay tonight? Dr. Chen asked. Your apartment. David realized he hadn't thought that far ahead. His one-bedroom apartment was a shrine to grief. Empty bottles, neglected housework, and boxes of Emma's belongings he'd never been able to unpack. Not exactly a healing environment for a traumatized child. Michael's hotel has suites, he said. We could get adjoining rooms. Actually, Michael interjected, I called ahead and booked a 2-bedroom suite, figured we might need the space. As they prepared to leave Murphy's, Emma turned to Martha. Thank you for the soup, and for being nice to me when I was scared. Martha hugged Emma gently. You're welcome any time, sweetheart. This will always be your place. In the hotel elevator, Emma pressed against David's side. Daddy, what if I remember things I don't want to remember? Then we'll handle them together. And if they're too scary to handle alone, Dr. Chen and Dr. Torres will help us. You're not alone anymore, baby girl. Emma nodded, then said something that chilled David to the bone. The lady who took me, she said you didn't want me anymore. That's why I couldn't remember your face for so long, but the song never went away completely. Emma, look at me. David tilted her chin up until their eyes met. That was a lie. The biggest, most terrible lie anyone has ever told you. I never stopped wanting you. I never stopped looking for you. I never stopped loving you, not for one single second. I know that now, Emma said quietly. But for a long time, I believed her. And that hurt worse than being hungry or cold or scared. That night, as Emma slept in the hotel bed beside him, David lay awake planning. Tomorrow would bring interviews, investigations, and the systematic dismantling of whatever organization had stolen his daughter. But tonight, she was safe. Tonight, she was home. The FBI field office felt more like a counseling center than a police station. Dr. Torres had created a child-friendly interview room with soft lighting, comfortable chairs, and art supplies scattered on a low table. Emma clutched patches against her chest as she studied the space warily. Special Agent Patricia Reeves was a 15-year veteran of crimes against children, with the kind of patient demeanor that immediately put Emma at ease. She explained everything before it happened, why they needed to record the conversation, who would be watching through the one-way mirror, what kinds of questions she might ask. Emma, you're not in trouble, Agent Reeves said gently. You're helping us find other kids who are lost, just like you were. Can you tell me about the first thing you remember after the park? Emma looked to David for reassurance before speaking. Waking up in a dark room. My head hurt really bad, and I was scared. There was a lady there who said Daddy didn't want me anymore. David's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his expression neutral. Dr. Torres had warned him about controlling his reactions during the interview. Can you describe this lady? Tall, blonde hair, blue eyes that were really cold. She wore expensive clothes and smelled like flowers, but mean flowers. Emma paused, accessing memories she'd buried for years. She said her name was Sarah, but that wasn't her real name. The man called her something else when he thought I wasn't listening. What did the man call her? Victoria, and she called him Marcus. Agent Reeves and the prosecutor exchanged glances. They clearly recognized those names. Emma, can you tell me about the house where they kept you? Emma picked up a crayon and began drawing on the paper Dr. Torres provided. Big house, but all the windows were covered. Tall fence around it with wire on top. There were cameras everywhere. She sketched as she talked, her artistic memory filling in details that amazed the adults watching. How many rooms in the house? Lots. But we weren't allowed in most of them. The kids stayed in the basement. There were maybe 8 rooms down there, with locks on the outside. Emma's voice grew smaller. Some rooms had kids in them. Some rooms were empty and waiting. David felt bile rise in his throat. A trafficking operation. That's what they were dealing with. A systematic, organized trafficking ring using Chicago as a hub. Emma, this is really important, Agent Reeves continued. Do you remember anything about how you got out, how you escaped? Emma's hand stopped moving. She stared at the drawing for a long moment, then set down the crayon. There was a fire, she said slowly. Or, no, not a fire. Smoke, lots of smoke and sirens. The lady, Victoria, she was screaming at Marcus about the police coming. They grabbed some stuff and ran, but they forgot about us in the basement. Drew, what happened then? The smoke got really thick. Some of the older kids broke the locks on the doors. We all ran outside together, but then everyone scattered different directions. I ran and ran until I couldn't run anymore. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I should have stayed with Tommy. I should have made sure he got out too. Doctor? Torres leaned forward. Emma, you were 7 years old and terrified. You did exactly what you needed to do to survive. Tommy's capture isn't your fault. But what if he's still there? What if they moved him to a different bad place? Agent Reeves consulted her notes. Emma, the fire you remember, that was a warehouse on the south side. We found evidence of the trafficking operation, but by the time we arrived, everyone was gone. That was 18 months ago. 18 months. Emma had been free for 18 months, but living on the streets because she couldn't remember who she was or where she belonged. After you escaped, what did you do? I hid for a long time. Then I started walking. I was so hungry and scared, but I didn't know who to trust. Finally, I found the places where other kids like me stayed. The shelters, the warm spots, the people who were nice. Emma described a heartbreaking journey through Chicago's underground network of homeless children, a world David had never known existed. She'd learned which churches provided meals, which police officers were safe to approach, which adults might hurt her. How did you end up on Michigan Avenue? I heard someone humming that song, my song, the one Daddy taught me. It was a lady walking with her little girl, and she was humming it to make the girl stop crying. Emma looked at David. That's when I started remembering little pieces, so I went to where I heard the song, hoping maybe I'd remember more. The irony was devastating. Emma had been drawn to Michigan Avenue by fragments of memory triggered by their lullaby, while David had been sitting in that same coffee shop every weekend, hoping for exactly this kind of miracle. Agent Reeves showed Emma several more photographs, adults this time, suspected traffickers and associates. When she reached the 8th photo, Emma recoiled, as if she'd been struck. That's him. That's Marcus. David looked at the photo and felt his blood turn to ice. The man was in his 50s, well-dressed, with the kind of face that would blend into any corporate boardroom, but his eyes held a coldness that made David want to grab Emma and run. Marcus Henley, Agent Reeves said. We've been hunting him for 3 years. Emma, your testimony could be the key to taking down his entire operation. But Emma wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at something behind Agent Reeves, her face white with terror. He's here, she whispered. Marcus is here. Agent Reeves spun around to follow Emma's gaze, but saw only the hallway beyond the interview room's open door, empty, quiet, normal. Emma, there's no one there, Dr. Torres said gently. You're safe. This is the FBI building. But Emma was shaking uncontrollably, pressing herself against David as if trying to disappear. He was there, in the hallway, looking at me. Agent Reeves spoke quickly into her radio, requesting a security sweep of the building. Within seconds, David could hear rapid footsteps and urgent voices in the corridor outside. "Emma, honey, sometimes when we talk about scary memories, our brain tricks us into thinking we see things that aren't really there," Dr. Torres explained. "It's called a flashback, and it's totally normal after what you've been through." But David wasn't convinced. Emma had survived 3 years by trusting her instincts. If she said she saw Marcus, maybe she had. Agent Reeves returned 5 minutes later, her expression grim. "Building's secure. But I need to ask you something, David. Have you posted anything on social media about finding Emma? Contacted any news outlets?" "No, nothing. I haven't told anyone except Michael and—" David stopped, his stomach dropping. "Detective Morrison. I left him voicemails. Told him I'd found her. Morrison's clean, been on the force for 20 years. Agent Reeves paused, studying David's face. "But someone leaked the location of this interview. We've got surveillance footage of a man matching Marcus Henley's description entering the parking garage 20 minutes ago." Dr. Torres immediately stood. "We need to move Emma to a safe location. Now." As if on cue, the building's fire alarm began blaring. Agent Reeves grabbed her radio, but got only static. Someone had jammed the communications. "This is not a drill," Agent Reeves said, drawing her weapon. "David, take Emma and follow Dr. Torres to the secure elevator. I'm calling for backup." But as they moved toward the door, Emma grabbed David's arm. "Daddy, this is what happened at the bad place. The alarms, the confusion. This is how they took kids when the police came, during the chaos." David realized with crystalline clarity that they were walking into a trap. Marcus hadn't come to the FBI building by accident. He'd come because he knew exactly where Emma would be, and he'd planned this distraction to get her back. "Where's the closest exit that doesn't use the main elevators?" David asked Agent Reeves. "Stairwell at the end of the hall, but that's where he'll be waiting," Emma said with the certainty of hard experience. "There's another way. There always is. You just have to think like someone who's scared." Emma led them in the opposite direction, toward what looked like a dead end. But she'd spotted something the adults had missed. A maintenance door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The door was unlocked. "Emergency exit protocols," Agent Reeves muttered as they slipped through. "All doors unlock automatically during fire alarms." They found themselves in a service corridor that ran parallel to the main hallway. Through the thin walls, David could hear shouts and confusion as federal agents responded to what they believed was a fire emergency. Emma moved through the corridor with the confidence of a child who'd learned to navigate dangerous spaces. She paused at each intersection, listening, watching, before motioning them forward. "There," she whispered, pointing to an exit sign barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. "That leads to the parking garage, if we can get to your car." But as they approached the exit, footsteps echoed from the stairwell beyond. Male voices, coordinated, professional, not FBI agents responding to an emergency, something else entirely. Agent Reeves recognized it too. She pressed her back against the wall, weapon ready, and motioned for David to keep Emma behind him. The door opened, and Marcus Henley stepped through. He was exactly as Emma had described, well-dressed, cold-eyed, carrying himself with the arrogant confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. 2 other men flanked him, both armed. "Hello, Emma," Marcus said pleasantly, as if greeting an old friend. "You've caused us quite a bit of trouble, young lady. Time to come home." "No, she is home," David said, stepping protectively in front of his daughter, "with her real family." Marcus smiled, and the expression was genuinely terrifying. "David Thompson, software engineer, recently unemployed, history of depression and alcohol abuse. Not exactly Father of the Year material. Emma needs more structured guidance." "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged," one of the gunmen said, but Agent Reeves was already moving, using the narrow corridor to her advantage. Her first shot took down the man on Marcus's left. Her second sent the other gunman diving for cover. "Run!" she shouted to David and Emma. "Get out of here now!" David grabbed Emma's hand and bolted for the exit, leaving Agent Reeves to face Marcus and his remaining associate. Behind them, gunshots echoed in the confined space, impossibly loud. They burst through the exit door into the parking garage, and David fumbled for his car keys, but Emma was pulling him in a different direction. "Not the car," she said urgently. "They'll have people watching the cars. This way." She led him toward a utility exit he never would have noticed, a small door marked electrical access. Beyond it, a narrow alley that connected to the street. "How do you know about all these hidden exits?" David asked as they ran. "When you're a kid, and everyone bigger than you is dangerous, you learn to see the ways out that adults miss," Emma replied, sounding far too wise for her 8 years. They emerged onto a busy Chicago street 3 blocks from the FBI building. Behind them, sirens wailed and smoke poured from the building's upper floors. Real smoke now, not just alarms. David pulled out his phone to call for help, but Emma stopped him. "Daddy, they found us at the FBI. They knew exactly where we'd be and when. That means someone told them." And Emma's green eyes were hard with knowledge no child should possess. "We can't trust anyone official right now. We have to hide until we figure out who the leak is." David stared at his 8-year-old daughter, realizing she was absolutely right. Someone with access to federal law enforcement had betrayed them. Until they knew who, everyone was potentially dangerous. "Where do we go?" David asked. Emma thought for a moment, then smiled, the first truly confident expression he'd seen from her since their reunion. "I know exactly where to go. Somewhere they'll never think to look, because it's the last place anyone would expect to find us." Emma led David through a maze of alleys and side streets with the confidence of someone who'd learned Chicago's hidden geography the hard way. They ducked under fire escapes, cut through parking lots, and used every shortcut a desperate child had discovered during months of staying invisible. "Where are we going?" David asked as they slipped through a gap in a chain-link fence. "The old Riverside Church on Ashland," Emma said. "It's been abandoned for years, but Pastor Miguel still checks on it sometimes. He's good people, feeds kids, doesn't ask questions, doesn't call authorities on runaways." David had never heard of Pastor Miguel, but he trusted Emma's survival instincts more than his own knowledge of the city. She'd kept herself alive for 18 months when trained federal agents couldn't keep her safe for 18 minutes. The church was a Gothic revival building that had seen better decades. Plywood covered most windows, and ivy climbed the stone walls like green fingers. But Emma led David to a basement entrance hidden behind overgrown bushes, where a door hung slightly ajar. Inside, the basement had been converted into an informal shelter. Sleeping bags lined one wall, and a small kitchen area contained donated food and a camping stove. The space was clean and organized, clearly maintained by someone who cared. "Miguel," Emma called softly. "It's Emma. Are you here?" A door at the far end opened, and a man in his 60s emerged. Pastor Miguel was small and wiry, with gentle eyes, and the kind of weathered hands that spoke of a lifetime of helping others. When he saw Emma, his face lit up with genuine joy. "Mija, where have you been? I was worried when you disappeared from the street." Then he noticed David and grew cautious. "Who is this?" This is my daddy," Emma said simply. "We found each other, but some very bad people are trying to take me away again, and we need somewhere safe to hide." Miguel studied David's face carefully, then looked back at Emma. Whatever he saw there satisfied him. "The bad people who took you before?" Emma nodded. "And others. They have helpers everywhere, even with the police. That's how they found us at the FBI building." Miguel's expression darkened. "I know about these people. They prey on lost children, kids the system has forgotten. Come, you can stay in the upper rooms. No one will think to look for you in a place like this." He led them upstairs to what had once been the pastor's office. The room contained a cot, a desk, and bookshelves lined with theological texts in English and Spanish. Most importantly, it had a window that offered a clear view of all approaches to the building. "Emma told me the truth about you," Miguel said to David as he prepared coffee on a hot plate. "She drew pictures of her father for months, always the same face, always with love. When a child holds on to love through what she's been through, that love is real." David felt tears threaten again. "How long have you known her?" 8 months, maybe 9. She showed up here during the first cold snap, nearly frozen. Most street kids don't trust adults. But Emma, she had this way of seeing people's hearts. She knew I was safe. "Pastor Miguel saved my life," Emma said quietly. "When I got really sick last winter, he took care of me. When older kids tried to hurt me, he protected me. When I was so hungry I couldn't think, he made sure I had food." David gripped Miguel's hand. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay. You don't repay love, my friend. You pass it forward. But now we need to think about keeping Emma safe." Miguel's expression grew serious. "If these people found you at the FBI, they have resources we can't fight directly. You need help from someone they don't expect." "Like who?" Miguel smiled. "Like the network of people who've been keeping your daughter alive for the past year. Street people, shelter workers, social activists, people who are invisible to those with power, but who see everything that happens in this city." Emma nodded eagerly. "Miguel knows everyone, and everyone loves him because he helps without judging. If anyone can figure out who the leak is, it's the street network." Within an hour, Miguel had made a dozen phone calls in rapid Spanish. David caught only fragments, but he understood the urgency in the pastor's voice. By evening, a steady stream of visitors had arrived at the church. Social workers, former homeless individuals, community activists, even a few police officers who worked with at-risk youth. Each person shared information. Suspicious movements around government buildings, rumors of federal agents asking the wrong questions, whispers about children who disappeared from protective custody. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Marcus Henley's trafficking operation had informants throughout Chicago's law enforcement and social services network. Kids who tried to report abuse were discredited or simply vanished. Families who got too close to the truth faced mysterious accidents. But there's something else," said Detective Rosa Martinez, one of the police officers Miguel trusted. "Internal Affairs has been investigating leaks in missing children cases for months. They're close to identifying the source, but they need Emma's testimony to make charges stick." "How do we know Internal Affairs isn't compromised too?" David asked. Detective Martinez pulled out her phone and showed them a video message. The sender was Agent Patricia Reeves, alive but with her arm in a sling. "David, Emma, if you're seeing this, I'm okay. Got winged in the shootout, but we got Marcus Henley. Unfortunately, we also discovered that Detective Morrison has been feeding information to Henley's organization for over 2 years. He's in custody, but there may be others. Trust Detective Martinez. She's been working undercover for Internal Affairs this whole time. It's time to come in from the cold." Emma studied Detective Martinez's face with that careful attention David was learning to respect. "You were watching me, weren't you? On the streets, making sure I was okay." Martinez nodded. "For months. We suspected you might be connected to the Henley case, but we couldn't approach you directly without blowing our investigation. When you disappeared from Michigan Avenue, I thought we'd lost our chance. The morning I found Emma," David said slowly, "you weren't there by coincidence. Miguel called me when he realized Emma had vanished. I've been searching for you both since yesterday." Martinez smiled at Emma. "You're very good at staying hidden, Mija. Even from people trying to help you." Emma considered this information, then made her decision with the quiet authority of someone who'd learned to trust her instincts above all else. Okay, she said, but this time, we do it right. No big FBI buildings, no interviews where bad people can find us, and Daddy and Miguel come with me everywhere. Agreed, Martinez said. We'll handle this at a safe house with only the people we absolutely trust. And Emma, this time, when we get Marcus Henley and his associates, they're going to stay caught. The safe house was a modest ranch home in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business and federal agents could come and go without attracting attention. Emma had insisted on inspecting every room, every exit, every potential hiding place before agreeing to the arrangement. Old habits, she explained to David as she checked the basement windows. When your life depends on knowing the way out, you never stop looking. The final interview took place in the living room, with Emma curled up next to David on the couch, Patches in her lap, and Miguel sitting nearby. Dr. Torres was there, along with Detective Martinez and a federal prosecutor who specialized in trafficking cases. But this time felt different. Emma was in control, setting the pace, choosing how much to share and when to take breaks. She drew pictures as she talked, her artistic memory filling in details that broke the case wide open. The trafficking ring was massive. Not just Marcus Henley, but a network spanning multiple states, using foster care system failures and missing children cases to target vulnerable kids. Emma's memories, combined with evidence from other survivors they'd located, painted a picture of systematic predation that had operated for years. There were always new kids coming, Emma said, sketching another face from memory, and some kids who'd been there a long time, who helped take care of the newer ones. They taught me how to stay quiet, how to hide when the bad adults came around, how to share food so everyone got enough. David learned that his daughter had survived not just through her own resilience, but through the protection and kindness of other trafficked children. Kids who'd formed their own family system in hell, taking care of each other when no adults would. The prosecutor was particularly interested in Emma's memories of the administrative side of the operation. You mentioned seeing papers, files. Can you remember anything specific? Emma nodded, pulling out a fresh sheet of paper. The lady, Victoria, she kept lists, names, ages, where kids came from. She began drawing symbols and numbers. I couldn't read most of it, but I remember the pictures they took of all of us, and how they marked some files with red stars. Red stars? Kids who were going to be moved somewhere far away, kids who wouldn't be coming back. Emma's voice grew smaller. Tommy had a red star on his file. The room went quiet. Finally, the prosecutor spoke. Emma, because of your testimony and your memories, we've been able to identify 17 other children who were trafficked through this network. 7 have been found and returned to their families. We're still looking for the others, including Tommy. Will you find him? We're going to try our hardest. And Emma, none of this is your fault. You were a victim, but you're also a hero. Your courage is going to help a lot of other kids. As the formal interview concluded, Dr. Torres sat with David and Emma to discuss the next steps. The trauma therapy will take time, she explained. Emma's developed incredible coping mechanisms, but she'll need professional support to process everything she's been through. And David, you'll need support too. Reunification after this kind of trauma is complex. What about school? Emma asked. I've missed 3 years. Do I have to repeat kindergarten? Dr. Torres smiled. Actually, you'll probably test ahead of your grade level. You've learned more about survival, problem-solving, and reading people than most adults ever will. We'll work with the school district to find the right placement. That evening, as they prepared to leave the safe house for a hotel room, the start of their transition back to normal life, Emma pulled David aside. Daddy, I need to tell you something important. David knelt to her level. What is it, sweetheart? When I was at the bad place, and when I was living on the streets, I used to dream about you every night. But in the dreams, you were always sad, always searching, always calling my name. I thought the dreams meant you didn't want me anymore, because in them you seemed so hurt. David's throat constricted. Emma, but now I understand. You weren't hurt because you didn't want me. You were hurt because you missed me. The dreams weren't showing me that you'd given up. They were showing me that you never stopped looking. Never, David whispered. Not for one single day. Emma hugged him fiercely. I wrote you a song while I was lost. Do you want to hear it? David nodded, not trusting his voice. Emma's clear, sweet voice filled the room. Somewhere in the darkness, someone's calling my name. Somewhere past the fear and pain, love remains the same. Though I couldn't see your face, though I couldn't find my way, love was building bridges that would bring me home someday. Home is not a place you go. Home is where you're known. Home is in the lullabies that claim you as their own. Every star that watched over me was singing love's refrain. You are not forgotten. You are not alone, in pain. When she finished, the room was silent except for the sound of Miguel quietly weeping. That's beautiful, baby girl, David managed. Will you teach it to me? I'll teach you all my songs, Emma said. And you can teach me all the ones I forgot. We have so much time now, Daddy. So much time to remember everything good. 6 months later, David sat in the same corner booth at Murphy's Coffee House, but everything was different. Emma sat across from him, working on homework, while she waited for her hot chocolate. She attended a special school for gifted children, where her artistic talents were nurtured and her academic gaps were quickly closing. The nightmares still came sometimes, and there were days when crowds made her anxious or unexpected noises sent her into brief panic. But Dr. Torres said that was normal, expected, part of the healing process that would continue for years. Marcus Henley and 14 associates had been convicted on federal trafficking charges. Detective Morrison had received 25 years for corruption and conspiracy. 8 more children had been found and returned to their families, including Tommy Rodriguez, who was now attending art therapy sessions with Emma twice a week. Daddy, Emma said, looking up from her math worksheet, do you think the scared kids out there know that people are looking for them? That there are people who won't give up? David reached across the table and took her hand. I think they hope, sweetheart. Just like I hoped, just like you hoped. And sometimes, when you hold on to hope long enough, it finds a way to come true. Emma smiled and returned to her homework, humming softly under her breath. The melody was familiar, their lullaby, but changed, evolved, made new by everything they'd survived together. Outside Murphy's window, snow was falling again, covering Chicago in fresh white possibility. And inside, a father and daughter sat together, no longer broken by loss, but made stronger by love that had refused to surrender. Their story had begun with a song, survived through a song, and would continue with the songs they'd write together, melodies of hope that would echo long after the last note faded into the infinite promise of tomorrow.